Good day all, how you all going? My name's Wilfred West, Wilfred's PC World, Lakeside Cottage in Loch Sport, Victoria, Australia. Today's date is the 20th of the 3rd, 2015, and it's 25 to 4 in the afternoon, and we're going to go for a drive to the PA box, and also going to put some letters off at the post office. Now you can see my GoPro camera there at the present moment. That's happily recording there with that little thing attached up to there. I think it's sitting on wide settings. It's 1920 by 1080 wide settings, which will give me, I think, 29 frames per second. It's supposed to be 30, but it's 29. Now this is where I mounted this before I mount the GoPro when I want to have that view in the front, which I'm going to have to get another camera now for it. We got a cellular navigation device there, and that's my reversing camera. Now here, I hope to pick it up. Oh, here we go, we can. This is fantastic because it not only gives you the time, it gives you the temperature outside. I've got the aircon at the moment too. It also gives you, when you want to go auxiliary, which gives you a little, look at a memory card which it's got what, 12 gigs of music on it, which I can use that, FM radio, AM radio, CD, and so forth. Well, we'll head off and go for a drive, shall we?
About 30 requests for help, and authorities expressing relief that the area escaped relatively unscathed. Meantime, the Bureau of Meteorology has declared a cyclone watch for most of the eastern half of the Northern Territory coastline. The cyclone watch extends from Numbulwar to Maningrida, including Nhulunbuy and Groote Eylandt. Cyclone Nathan is moving overland across North Queensland and is not expected to affect the Territory coast within the next 36 hours, but it may pose a threat to coastal areas of the Arnhem District on Sunday. Forecaster Adam Morgan says the cyclone is expected to redevelop in the Gulf of Carpentaria, and it could hit the coast late on Saturday night, but more likely on Sunday morning.
Once in the Gulf, Cyclone Nathan should take a west to northwest track. We're looking at this stage that it's making a coastal crossing to south of Nhulunbuy, but there is a lot of uncertainty in the track. The cyclone could move a little bit south, or it could impact flyover water to the north.
In Western Australia, the Department of Immigration and Border Protection says a small number of detainees are still protesting at the Yonga Hill Immigration Detention Centre in northern east of Perth. It says trained negotiators are engaging with the detainees. One detainee alleges he hit his head and collapsed after being dragged against a fence by a guard. The department says it would not be appropriate to make further detailed comments on matters that are subject to continuing operations. A 28-year-old Canberra man will serve 9 months in prison for breaking into the home of a woman he'd met on dating site eHarmony and detaining her for 3 hours. Matthew Doran reports.
An ACT Supreme Court jury found Drew Francis Thompson guilty last year. He looked down into his hands as Acting Justice David Robinson told the court the only reasonable sentence was one of imprisonment. Thompson was sentenced to 2 years jail, but that sentence will be suspended from December this year if he enters into a good behaviour bond. In sentencing remarks, Acting Justice Robinson said his actions had filled his victim with terror. He said Thompson's prospects for rehabilitation were good, and he was receiving treatment for depression since committing the crime.
The icebreaker Aurora Australis is making good progress as it returns to Davis Station in Antarctica to pick up a seriously ill expeditioner. The ship left the station on Monday but had to turn around yesterday after the man became ill. He is in a serious but stable condition under the care of the station doctor and the Australian Antarctic Division's Polar Medicine Unit. The Aurora Australis is expected to reach Davis Harbour about lunchtime tomorrow. US President Barack Obama has addressed the leaders and people of Iran, saying there has been no better time in decades for the two countries to seek a new relationship. Here's the BBC's Gary O'Donoghue.
President Obama said the days and weeks ahead would be critical as the deadline for reaching a framework over Iran's nuclear program approaches next week. Negotiations had made progress, said the president, but gaps remained. Now Iran's leaders had a choice between two paths. One that would continue sanctions and isolation, the other that would lead to more trade, jobs and investment.
A spokesman for the pop group One Direction says singer Zayn Malik has quit the group's world tour because of stress. The 22-year-old is returning home to Britain as the rest of the band goes on to play shows. He's 7 cents US a barrel, Tapas at $56 US, and gold at $1,170.80 US an ounce. The Aussie dollar buying 76.7 US cents at the moment on the cross rates, buying 51, almost 52 British pence, 72 euro cents, 92 Japanese yen, and $1.03 New Zealand. Well, let's find out what's happening in sports news for you now. Welcome back, Tim Morton.
Thanks, Kathy. Let's start with the big cricket match. Australia has the upper hand against Pakistan in their World Cup quarter-final in Adelaide this afternoon. Mitchell Starc, who's been Australia's best bowler, has done it again, removing Sarfraz Ahmed for 10. Josh Hazlewood, who's come in from Pat Cummins, has also struck, sending Ahmed Shahzad on his way to 5. After 15 overs, Pakistan is now 2 for 64. The winner of today's match will face defending champions India, who claimed their 7th straight win of the tournament after beating Bangladesh by 109 runs last night. While his side is now out of the tournament, Bangladesh captain Mushraf-e Mortaza sees a bright future for his young team.
Most of our players are, they just play 2 or 3 ODIs. They're very starting under their career. I think boys should be very happy with their effort, and back home should be happy, and we have a lot of series coming on, so hopefully we'll carry on from here.
In the AFL, Fremantle coach Ross Lyons says he's determined to ensure the Ryan Crowley drug case isn't a distraction for his team during its 2015 campaign. Crowley is on a provisional suspension and is waiting a tribunal hearing after testing positive last year under the AFL's anti-doping code. Lyons says the players are trying not to dwell on the situation.
It can be a distraction, because that'd be the first question, is it a distraction? Well, clearly it can be, but we just talk about, just start thinking about those things and use that as a stimulus to focus on what's important.
In rugby league, the NRL has provisionally suspended Sydney Roosters player Martin Kennedy after he allegedly breached the code's anti-doping policy. Front rower was issued with a breach notice by the NRL on Wednesday for the alleged possession and attempted use of banned substances. The matter will now proceed to the NRL's anti-doping tribunal. Kennedy faces a 2-year suspension if found guilty. Roosters coach Trent Robinson says he's concerned about Kennedy's welfare.
I haven't gone into any details with him. My point of view with Marty's been welfare and making sure he's okay as a person. And then, those allegations came to light Wednesday morning for us as a club, and then that's been out of our hands, obviously, from a legal perspective, and then we've dealt with the person with every walk of life, and he's going to get his hearing. And until that point, we have to look after the player. You can't assume guilt until that tribunal's been held, and that's a good human point of view to have. I think we need to continue on that and support that. So there's no point in us playing judge and jury before the tribunal meets.
In golf, Australia's Adam Scott and Jason Day within 3 shots of the lead after the first round of the Arnold Palmer Invitational in Florida. Scott carded a 4-under 68. Day is a shot back at 3-under. American Morgan Hoffman leads the field at 6-under. Day says he's played conservatively despite carding an eagle, 3 birdies and 2 bogeys.
I didn't do anything too crazy out there to get myself into too much trouble, so very pleased with how I hit the ball, and I'm happy with the score today.
And in horse racing, Golden Slipper favourite Vancouver faces a tough task, starting from barrier 18 for tomorrow's $3.5 billion 2-year-old classic. Sydney's Rose Hill venue is the venue for the big race, which was the first run back in 1957. Jockey Tommy Berry says the wide barrier isn't great, but believes Vancouver has the class to overcome it.
When the barrier did come out for Vancouver, I wasn't too worried for some reason. I think that's because he's such a versatile colt. He can race back or forward, and he's willing to help you when you do want to come back or you do want to press forward. So as long as we get a little bit of luck in the early stages, he'll do the rest, I believe.
Trainer Gay Wardhouse is looking for the 6th win in the event, a number that would equal the Slipper success for late father Tommy Smith. And just a quick update on the cricket. Pakistan now 2 for 65 against Australia in Adelaide. Kathy.
Thank you very much, Tim. Tim Morton, back in the next half hour. In the meantime, let's find out what's happening on the roads around the country with James Engelman from the Australian Traffic Network.
Kathy, thank you. In Brisbane, first of all, we've got a broken down truck at the Gateway Bridge at Marari, lights out as well, Napa Road at Chester Street, Parkwood. and power outages around Rockley and Dorongapilly, so look out for lights around those areas as well. In Sydney, accidents on the Hume Highway, Narellan Road, Campbelltown. Also one in Sefton on Ferndale Street, a breakdown on the F3 at Mooney Creek, and another smash in Berkeley Vale on Wyong Road as well. In Melbourne, accidents on Matthews Road, Airport West, also Pascoe Road, Strathmore, and one on Eastlink at Rowville as well. In Adelaide, accidents on Towers Terrace at Edwardstown, also one Devon Terrace in Northcote Street in Kilburn as well. And in Perth, we've still got some debris on the Reed Highway and Alexander Avenue in Diangella. I'm James Engelman, more ABC News Radio traffic in half an hour.
Thanks very much for that, James. To the weather outlook for the rest of your day.
Yeah, it's sunny. Yeah, a touch of clouds, no fucking rain.
Most of its population concentrated in several big cities on the coast, and then an enormous and vitally important and highly productive hinterland with which agriculture played an enormous part. So as far as our earnings go, the earnings from grain and wool were very, very significant and had to be looked after, and the National Party represented a lot of those areas, so it had to be listened to.
Things have changed since then. Did you watch with interest and talk with Malcolm Fraser a lot about, you know, his modern perceptions of the Liberal Party with whom he'd sort of drifted apart and resigned his membership from?
Yes, we didn't talk extensively about politics. We had lots of other things to talk about, and you know, the family is very close. I mean, one thing that I think marks Malcolm as a man very much is the fact that lots of people, those close to him, loved him. A lot of people respected him. Everyone, I think, respected him, and some people probably disliked him. But the real acid test was the fact that his family all unconditionally loved him.
Indeed.
Well, Malcolm was an intensely humane person, not only with human beings, but with his animals. And I think we didn't go into detail about refugees and that sort of thing. I mean, we had discussions about them, and I think we all agree that they should be treated humanely. I think I didn't agree with all his views on that, but nevertheless, I respect them because he was a very responsible person for the human race.
Do you think it helped farmers to have one in the lodge?
Oh, I think that always does some good. Not particularly about farmers, but someone who appreciated the fact that the agricultural base of this country was important and still is today.
And that was Malcolm Fraser's brother-in-law, Hugh Beggs, speaking there with Serena Locke. The Immigration Minister, Peter Dutton, says the Immigration Department has accepted and responded to all 19 recommendations made in the Moss Review into allegations of sexual misconduct at the Nauru Detention Centre. The report has found there were concerns about some Save the Children employees' behaviour in the centre, but there was no evidence that staff were encouraging protests. Mr Dutton, along with the Secretary of the Department of Immigration and Border Protection, Michael Fazzulo, have held a press conference just a short time ago.
We have a very strong partner with the rural government. I've worked very closely with Minister Adiang and with the Justice Minister, with the President and with the officials in Nauru. I was on the island only a few weeks ago. The Nauruan people are great people. They want to provide support to people who are seeking a new start to their life. They have in place a strong water system, and they have to deal with difficult circumstances. They have committed themselves to making sure they can provide appropriate accommodation for people within the regional processing centres. And like the Australian government, they don't have a tolerance for illegal behaviour, including in particular sexual assault. I find the thought of anybody, in particular children, being sexually assaulted completely abhorrent. It's not something that we would accept in Australia, and it's not something that the Nauruans accept in their community either. So I know that the Nauruan government takes this issue very seriously. I know that they will deal with matters in relation to this report. Well, Sean, the Secretary was on a plane early this morning to come up to Brisbane. I had wanted to make the announcement last week, and I had to go to Cambodia. This afternoon I'm going to Darwin to represent the Prime Minister at the Operation Slipper commemoration services for our troops who served in Afghanistan, which is tomorrow, and I won't return back from Darwin until about 6 p.m. tomorrow night. I get asked at every press conference when the Moss Review is going to be released. The Secretary's been very keen to release it because they have had some time to consider the recommendations. And the last thing we wanted to do was to come out today to say that they hadn't been properly considered and that we didn't have a response as to how we were going to address the concerns raised by Mr Moss. So I think it's been prudently assessed, and I think any suggestions, frankly, from you or from anybody else that this relates to Malcolm Fraser's death, I just want to call the question. I'm happy to. Well, I'm sorry if they are, and I'm sorry that you are, because nobody else has raised an issue with me. But we wanted to get the report out. I was asked in a press conference yesterday when it was coming out, and there are lots of journalists who have been pressuring us to release this report. As I say, the Secretary was on a plane from Canberra this morning, well before any of us knew the sad passing of Mr Fraser, and I just think that is a question, frankly, that's completely out of hand. Are there any other questions? Well, the report's made some recommendations. I'll let the Secretary go to specific detail because the report's been commissioned by the Secretary of the Department and it's come back to him for his consideration. So I'll let Mr Fazzulo make it specific.
Thank you, Minister. The report does not find any conclusive evidence that the Save the Children employees in any way actively encouraged protest activity or the like. It makes it pretty clear, though, and Chapter 4 requires detailed reading, that there was a concern that had been building up over time between the centre operators, the company that provides the services, the government of Nauru officials, but particularly my officials, about some of the behaviours of the Save the Children staff. It's documented in terms of their evidence and their testimony to Mr Moss. If I can paraphrase it, it related to the fact that there was a perception starting to build, not just at the point in time when the Save the Children staff were removed, but in the months leading to that, but there was a degree of advocacy and there was a degree of, if you like, engaging on the, if you like, ideological and policy questions of related to detention rather than the strict delivery of services. And Mr Moss, I think, finds pretty compellingly that the relationship had gotten to a point where there were issues that needed to be addressed. Now, he does say, and it's on the face of the report, that the contractual point-in-time decision to remove the staff, or to seek to have them removed, because they have to be removed both contractually but also in terms of their visa status by the government of Nauru, is something that should be reviewed in the context action plan to respond to the Moss review, which has led to the release of the document today. And in response to the gentleman's question earlier, I found out about Mr. Fraser's sad passing, and can I add, as a Commonwealth Secretary, not in terms of his service to the Liberal Party, but his service as a former Prime Minister, our condolences on behalf of my brother and sister secretaries as well. I found out about his passing when I arrived here, so any suggestion that we've just sort of jacked this up on the fly is just ridiculous.
And that was Customs Chief Executive Michael Pezzulo there, and before him the Immigration Minister Peter Dutton. Let's go overseas now. More than 10,000 people may have already died of the disease, but there are still people who are in denial that the disease Ebola exists. Liberia seems to have gotten the outbreak under control, and Sierra Leone has just announced a 3-day curfew in order to stem a new rise in cases. But Guinea poses the greatest concern, with the World Health Organization saying 95 new Ebola cases have been confirmed in just the past week, the highest weekly total so far.
My name's Wilfred West, Wilfred's PC World, Lakeside Cottage in Loch Sport, Victoria, Australia, signing off. Thank you for watching my videos, and all comments are welcome. You all have a great day now.